Chapter 1225. Master. Hui Lang's voice traveled over, causing Xianyuan Mose, who was standing by the window, to come back to his senses and look at him. Hui Lang's body carried a strong smell of blood, and his entire body was filled with murderous intent. He was like a fierce wolf that had just returned from a fight, giving people a very fierce feeling. This subordinate has already annihilated the last point, a total of 242 people, not a single one escaped. He respectfully reported. And go back and tell them to stop after this matter, and try not to appear in front of the other forces. Rest for a while and wait for further orders. Xianyuan Mose ordered in a deep voice. Yes. Hui Lang responded, and seeing that his master had already turned around, he retreated. Since their master had returned, reorganized his forces, and defeated the enemy forces. Although they had experienced many things and dangers in these 2 years, but now, the crisis had been resolved, and the most important thing was that the 1,000-year cold poison in their master's body had been cured. This was what made them most happy. Without the 1,000-year cold poison tormenting their master, they did not have to worry about their master's health. And in these 2 years, the Holy Emperor had also relied heavily on their master, and most of the empire's affairs were handed over to their master. This made the subordinates very happy. In their hearts, their master was the Holy Emperor's most outstanding son, and was the most capable natural ruler. Only their master could make the empire stand above the other empires, rule the entire empire, and lead the empire to glory. Outside, he saw that Ing Yi had unknowingly appeared outside the hall, so he walked over and asked, "Master, how long have you been standing in front of the window in a daze? Are you thinking about the ghost doctor again?" Ing Yi glanced at him and said, "Aren't you asking the obvious?" Hearing this, Hui Lang scratched his head and said doubtfully, "I don't understand, what's there to think about? If I hadn't seen you for 10 years, I probably wouldn't have thought about it either." Hearing this, Ing Yi rolled his eyes and was somewhat speechless. "How is this the same?" "That's true, you're not a woman." Hui Lang nodded and said, seeing Ing Yi's face darken. Seeing this, he grinned and patted him on the shoulder. Okay, don't throw a tantrum like a woman, I'm just casually saying it, it's just a random analogy." It would have been better if he hadn't said this, but as soon as he did, Shadow One's face darkened and his eyes widened. Although his heart was burning with anger, he still said in a calm voice, "Grey Wolf, we haven't fought in a long time. Why don't we practice?" "Practice? Good. Let's go." He nodded and gestured for him to go first. Ing Yi glanced at him and walked forward. However, he had only taken a few steps when he heard a gust of wind behind him. He looked back and saw that Grey Wolf had already jumped over the wall and left from the other side. He could only hear his voice coming from the wind. Ha, do you think I'm stupid? Practice. Don't you just want to use a legitimate excuse to teach me a lesson? I won't give you a chance, I'm leaving first, you go practice with your own shadow. Hui Lang's voice spread with the wind, inside and outside the palace, and in the open and in the dark, could not help but twitch the corners of their mouths, but they did not say anything. Chapter 1226. Ing Yi. Xianyuan Mose's voice came from inside. Ing, who was outside, immediately responded and went inside. "Master. There hasn't been any news from that side for the past few months. Go and ask what's going on." Xianyuan Mose turned around and looked at him. "I want the latest news from her." "Yes, your subordinate will go and ask right away." He responded and then retreated. He stood by the window for a while, then raised his hand to reveal the red string on his wrist. A trace of gentleness flashed across his deep black eyes. When he thought of her, his heart was filled with tenderness. On the other hand, Fengzhou, who was far away, was a little heartless. She played with Yi Jing along the way. Every time they arrived at a place, they would take advantage of the rest time to walk around. This journey back to the Phoenix Dynasty, which originally took half a month, took an entire month. Until this day, the flying ship entered the Phoenix Dynasty's imperial city. It flew over the city and arrived at the palace's main entrance. When the flying ship entered the imperial city, the Phoenix guards in the city quickly reported the news to the palace. They all knew that their master had returned. Even the commoners in the city looked up at the flying ship that suddenly appeared in mid-air and discussed in surprise. "Look, isn't this the ghost doctor's flying ship? It's the flying ship from back then. Is the ghost doctor back? Quick, let's go and take a look." The commoners in the city spoke in surprise and rushed towards the flying ship that was flying towards the palace. However, when they rushed to the palace's entrance, they only had time to see a red figure in the distance, surrounded by a crowd, heading towards the palace. Xiao Jiu is back. Feng Xiao heard the Phoenix Guard's report and couldn't help but stand up in surprise. "Where is she?" "She's already entered the palace." "Have you informed the retired emperor?" he asked as he strode outside. "I've already sent someone to inform him." Hearing that, Feng Xiao ordered, "Get people to prepare. We'll set up a family banquet tonight to welcome Xiao Jiu back." As soon as he finished speaking, he had already rushed forward. Seeing this, the Phoenix Guard behind him quickly went to instruct his subordinates to do something before following him. Feng Xiao saw the dazzling red figure from afar. Seeing that his daughter had returned home, Feng Xiao's serious face couldn't help but break into a big smile. "Xiao Jiu." "Father." Feng Jiu quickly stepped forward, came to his side, hugged his arm, smiled a pair of eyes, handsome face full of joy and joy. "Daddy, I can miss you." "Ha ha ha, Daddy misses you too. Look at you. You've been gone for more than a year and you've only sent a letter back. It's really worrying." He patted her hand and looked at the woman beside her in surprise. "This is..." Monarch. Yi Jing bowed and said warmly, "I am Yi Jing, Feng Jiu's friend." "Oh, so it's Xiao Jiu's friend. My daughter rarely brings friends back. I think you two must be very close." Feng Xiao said with a smile and nodded. "I went to her house on the way back and then brought her back. I asked her to come here to play and accompany me." Feng Jiu said to Yi Jing, "Don't call my father Monarch. Just call him Uncle. I'll bring you to meet my grandfather and grandmother later and introduce them to you." Chapter 12:27. Little Feng. Little Feng. Before the person arrived, the voice arrived first. However, when Feng Jiu heard the voice, she was slightly surprised. The voice was as young as a man in his 20s. She couldn't find a trace of her grandfather's old affection. Instead, it was a youthful voice full of vitality. Although the voice was no longer the old and affectionate voice she was familiar with, the words "Little Feng" were full of familiarity. Just as she smiled and looked in the direction of the voice, she saw a figure rush over and arrive in front of her in the blink of an eye. "Little Feng, why did you go back for so long? You left for more than a year and didn't even come back to visit." Grandfather was worried to death. Feng Sanyuan arrived in front of Feng Jiu and looked her up and down. After looking, he said with heartache, "You've lost a lot of weight and you've become a lot darker. Did you not eat enough outside? Are you exposed to the wind and the sun? Look at you, you didn't stay at home and just had to go out. You can't even eat well outside and came back so thin." Feng Jiu couldn't help but laugh. "Grandfather, it's not as exaggerated as you say. I'm still the same as before. I haven't changed much." "How could that be? You're clearly thin and dark." As Feng Sanyuan spoke, he saw the woman next to him covering her mouth and laughing. He asked in surprise, "Who is this little girl? Did you bring her back?" Grandfather Feng, I'm Yi Jing, Fengzhou's friend. Yi Jing quickly bowed. She was very curious. Although she had heard from Fengzhou that her grandfather looked even younger than her father, when she saw it with her own eyes, she still felt it was very inconceivable. In fact, in the cultivation world, there were many things like this. However, it was extremely rare in ordinary families. Even those who entered the nascent soul realm could at most recover to their middle age. It was rare for Fengzhou's grandfather to recover to the peak of his youth. Cultivation was originally going against the heavens. For someone with a powerful cultivation like Xiao Ti, it wasn't strange for him to recover his youth. She had once heard from her father that their country was the same. In places like the 8 great empires, there were many cultivators who only chose cultivation partners when they were over 100 years old, or even 200 or 300 years old. Therefore, it was not strange for Grandpa Feng to remarry at the age of 60 or 70. So you're Feng girl's friend. Since you're already here, just have fun and treat this place as your own home. Feng Sanyuan said with a smile. Then, he turned to Fengzhou and said, then you take good care of Yi Jing first. We'll set up a banquet tonight to welcome you all. Okay. Fengzhou smiled and said, let's go see grandmother and little uncle first. Thus, they all went to the inner palace together. After visiting Sushi first, Fengzhou took out the gifts he brought for them and distributed them. They chatted for a while in the hall before going to rest. In the evening, Fengzhou changed into a white dress. The snow-white dress was simple and elegant. When it was on her body, it formed 2 different styles compared to when she was dressed in men's red. If she was dressed in men's red, she was as dazzling as the sun. Then, when she was dressed in white, she was as holy as the bright moon in the sky. Regardless of whether it was red or white, she was able to control it. When she wore it, she exuded a noble aura. Chapter 12:28. Fengzhou, you're so beautiful in women's clothing. She couldn't help but praise her. She went up and looked her up and down. She really couldn't believe that she was so charming in women's clothing. She was completely different from when she was dressed in men's clothing. Isn't it just the same? She gently smiled and put down her hand, saying, all right, I'll take you around the palace. Then we'll go to the city to take a look. All right. Yi Jing smiled and followed her to the palace. They strolled around and looked at the scenery. Then they left a message that they would be back before the family banquet. Only then did they leave the palace. After returning, Fengzhou arranged for the Feng Wei and the others to return to the Feng Manor. Even Su Shan and the others were the same. Now, only Ling Shuang and Ling Hua were following behind Fengzhou. Although the 2 of them weren't the most outstanding by Fengzhou's side, their loyalty couldn't be compared to others. Also, they had been by her side for the longest time and had experienced the most things with her. The 2 of them would only do as she ordered. They would never question or hesitate. This was one of the reasons why she brought them with her. Even though Fengzhou hadn't returned for a long time, when she appeared, the people in the city still recognized her. They all greeted her. Some of the people selling fruits even wanted to give her some fruits to eat. Yi Jing was very surprised. Princess. Your Highness. Your Highness. Pure voices filled with joy rang out. As she walked, the citizens all called out to her. Some of them even waved and shouted at her from afar. Your Highness, you haven't come to our stall in a long time. Your Highness, our restaurant recently released a few new signature dishes. Your Highness. Yi Jing looked at Fengzhou, who was smiling and greeting everyone. She couldn't help but say, the people in your city are really simple. This kind of situation can't be seen anywhere else. That's because my father used to be the general of the kingdom, and I used to wander around the city often, so the people in the city are familiar with us. Fengzhou chuckled. After walking for a while, he turned to Yi Jing and said, "Let me tell you, there are some stalls in our city that sell things that are more authentic than restaurants. I'll take you there to try them." She brought Yi Jing to a small stall that she used to frequent and ordered some snacks. While eating, she said to her, "Tomorrow, I'll take you to see my brother's house and the place where my family used to live. The two places are right next to each other." "Okay." She nodded and asked, "So, your brother isn't coming back?" "It's hard to say whether or not he will come back. But I believe that he will definitely go to the 8 great empires in the future. His talent is not bad, and he has been training outside. He has a lot of combat experience and his combat strength is strong." Saying that, she ate something and said, "But you, after going back this time, will you go to the 1-Star Academy to report?" "Well, I will go to the 1-Star Academy to report, but I don't know if I will be selected as a disciple by the academy. But I have to try." Yi Jing continued, "I'm also on the recommendation list. If it weren't for the matter at home, I would have already gone there." Chapter 12:29. The two of them ate some snacks and strolled around the imperial city. Seeing that the sky had darkened, they headed towards the imperial palace. When they returned to the imperial palace, the banquet had already been prepared. There was no one else present, only their family members. This time, Fengzhou even saw the child that she had brought back along the way, Yang Yang. Back then, the child was 4 years old. A few years later, he was already 7 years old. He was a little shy and stood behind her, peeking at her from time to time, but he didn't dare to come forward. Seeing this, she smiled and waved her hand, "Yang Yang, come here." Hearing this, he glanced at Feng Sanyuan. "Go on over." He smiled and gestured. The child happily walked forward and came to Fengzhou's side, bowing respectfully. "Princess." He recognized her. She was the kind-hearted older sister who had brought him here. "Do you still recognize me?" She rubbed his head and asked with a smile. "I recognize you." He was a little happy and a little shy. After glancing at Fengzhou, he quickly lowered his head. "You've grown a lot taller. Have you been cultivating and studying properly?" she asked. Hearing this, he raised his head and replied, "Yes, the monarch and the retired emperor have both taught me to protect little master in the future. And that's my little uncle. You have to cultivate and study well. You have to protect him well in the future, okay?" In fact, it was good to arrange for him to be her little uncle's playmate. This child's physique was better than the average person's. If he cultivated, he would be faster in the future. If she could nurture him and let him grow up together with her little uncle, it would be extremely good for him and her little uncle. After all, growing up together would strengthen the bond between them. And Yang Yang will. The little guy's face was full of seriousness. He looked at Fengzhou and nodded as if he was assuring her. "I'm going to Peach Blossom Cove tomorrow. You can come with me." His family probably hadn't seen him in a long time. Tomorrow was the perfect time to bring him over. Hearing this, the little guy's eyes lit up, but he was a little hesitant. "Can I go?" As he spoke, he couldn't help but look at Feng Xiao and his father. Seeing this, Feng Xiao smiled and said, "Princess wants you to go, so you should go." "Yes." He smiled happily. "There's no one else. You can sit next to me." Fengzhou gestured for him to sit down and eat. Because it was a family banquet, most of the talk was about what happened to Fengzhou outside. It was not until the night grew dark that everyone dispersed and went back to rest. The next morning, Fengzhou took Yi Jing, Ling Shuang, Ling Hua, and Yang Yang to the Peach Blossom Cove. They took a carriage to the Peach Blossom Cove. Even Tun Yun, Xiao He, and Lao Bai came out of the space and went together. Yi Jing raised her head and looked up the mountain. Looking from afar, she could see that the entire mountain was covered in red. I lived here for a period of time in the past. It's quiet and secluded. It's excellent for cultivation or leisure. Most importantly, the peach blossoms here are very pleasing to the eye. Especially when the wind blows, the petals fall. It's like a rain of flowers. It's like a fairyland. Fengjiu walked forward. As he spoke, he looked at the peach blossoms. Returning to a familiar place and looking at the pleasing scenery, he couldn't help but relax. Chapter 12:30. That's fine too. But don't you need to go back to the palace? I'm already in the palace. Do you think I'm afraid I won't be able to see my family? Fengjiu chuckled. Besides, I saw them yesterday. It's fine for me to stay here for 2 days. If I come back for a long time, I'll stay here for a long time too. The two of them chatted as they walked up the mountain. Yang Yang and a few little beasts followed behind them. When they reached the top, she said to Yi Jing, "Walk around and take a look. I'll come and find you later." Okay. Yi Jing replied and watched as she brought Yang Yang into the peach blossom forest. Seeing this, she walked around the forest and admired the scenery. On the other side, Fengjiu brought Yang Yang to a courtyard. Before they even got close, a few figures appeared. Yang Yang. The Zhao family members who had become ghost cultivators could already appear during the day. When they saw Yang Yang return with their master, they couldn't help but feel excited. "Master, thank you for bringing Yang Yang back to see us." They hurriedly thanked him after bowing. Fengjiu's gaze swept past them and he smiled. "It seems that your cultivation has also improved. That's good too. When I go back, I'll tell my father to let Yang Yang come and see you once a month." Hearing this, they couldn't help but look at each other and excitedly bowed again. "Thank you, Master." They knew that they were ghost cultivators and their cultivation wasn't very strong. If they stayed too close to Yang Yang or spent too much time with him, his yang qi would be depleted. Therefore, even though they had been in this place for a long time, they never went out to see him in the palace. "Grandfather, grandmother, father, mother, Yang Yang misses you." The little guy threw himself into his mother's arms. Although he felt cold, he was still very happy to see them. Seeing this, Fengjiu smiled. "Your family must have a lot to talk about. I won't disturb you. I'll stay here with my friends for the next 2 days. Yang Yang will also stay here for 2 days. You can all have a good gathering." "Yes." They answered happily and watched as Fengjiu turned and left. Only then did they bring Yang Yang into the courtyard and ask him about his situation in the past 2 years. They stayed here for 2 days and returned to the imperial city at noon 2 days later. When they arrived in the city, Fengjiu took Yi Jing to see Guan Xilin's house. "This is my brother's home alone. Ever since he severed ties with the Guan family, he was the only one left. My brother has been looking for his father's whereabouts. He hopes that one day, he can bring his father back to the Guan family that he built single-handedly." "Princess. Princess." Fengjiu led Yi Jing inside. When the guards and housekeepers saw her, they hurried forward to salute her. As Yi Jing listened to Fengjiu talk, she looked at the scenery in the house. She saw that nothing was ostentatious and everything was exquisite. However, such a big house didn't even have a master. She couldn't help but think, if Guan Xilin lived here alone, how lonely would he be? Although he hasn't found his father, he still has you as his younger sister and your family. He's not alone. She looked at Fengjiu and said. Chapter 12:31. Seeing her stare at her with a smile, Yi Jing could not help but blush. "What are you staring at me for?" You should go tell your brother about this. Yes, yes, I will tell my brother. She gently smiled and brought her around the Guan Manor before returning to the Feng Manor. After my father and the others moved into the palace, this has been my own manor. I let my people live here, so there must be people living here. If there is no one living here, it will be empty every time I come back. Also, my manor has a chef who is very good at cooking. She brought her into the Feng Manor. After familiarizing her with the environment, she arranged a courtyard for her. When the people in the Feng Manor saw that Fengjiu had returned, they were all very happy. Greetings of master could be heard from time to time. Especially when the people in the kitchen knew that their master had returned, they began to get busy, planning to make some delicious food for their master. The two directly settled down in the manor. When evening came, Fengjiu remembered that there was something she had not told her father, so she went into the palace. After finding her father, who was handling affairs in the palace, she dismissed the others in the hall and walked forward to call out, "Father. Xiaozhou, you disappeared again these past 2 days. I just heard the phone guard say that you returned to the Feng Manor. Are you planning on not living in the palace?" Feng Xiao put down the matters at hand and asked her. "Although the palace is pretty good, I still like living in the manor. After living there for a long time, I have feelings for it. Now that I've come back, of course I want to live in my previous courtyard." She smiled and arrived at his side, holding his hand. Hearing this, Feng Xiao helplessly shook his head. All right, as you wish. However, you've already left the palace, yet you still came to find father. Is there something you need?" "And, there is something I need to say." She adjusted her expression and said, "In truth, I didn't tell you. I had the people in the black market ask about mother." Hearing this, Feng Xiao's expression froze. His heart jumped, and he asked with a bit of surprise, "And then? Was there any news?" This time, his daughter had returned and told them that she was already a nascent soul cultivator. Moreover, the fire phoenix had also entered adulthood. He was very happy about this. This meant that her strength had increased again. Even if they were not by her side to protect her outside, she could still deal with many unknown dangers. In the past, he had told her not to act rashly before she was strong enough and her wings were fully developed. However, things were different now. Not only was their Phoenix dynasty strong and prosperous, even their strength had increased. Moreover, their forces had expanded. In particular, Xiaozhou's reputation as the ghost doctor was well known in the various countries. She had also entered the nascent soul stage at such a young age and was ranked as a powerhouse. With such strength, she was no longer afraid of the Shengguan family, a powerful family of elixirs that had existed for more than 100 years. Thinking of the woman he had been separated from for so many years, his heart ached. It was all his fault for being so useless that he and his wife had been separated for so many years. Chapter 1232. They're too hateful. Hearing his daughter's words, Feng Xiao clenched his fists and hammered them heavily. His voice was angry, his eyes were sharp, and his heart was boiling with anger. Thinking that his memories were sealed and his beloved woman was imprisoned, the anger in his heart burned fiercely. The Shengguan family had gone too far. It was fine if they treated him, but to be so cold-blooded and heartless to their daughter, he really felt sad for Wanrong that she had such cold-blooded relatives. "There's one more thing," Fingzhou said, looking at her angry father. "The Shengguan family knows father's identity and that I'm your daughter. When I was there, they wanted to acknowledge me on the street, but I ignored them." "They know?" Feng Xiao asked, frowning. "They didn't do anything to you." "They can't do anything to me. Today, I came to find father to tell you my plan," she said slowly. "Mother is no longer in the Shengguan family. She has been accepted as a disciple by an alchemist called Dan Yangzi in a sect called Dan Yangzi in the 8 Great Empires. Not to mention that mother is no longer in the Shangguan family. Even if she is, such a family and relatives really don't have the information to establish a relationship with us. But I think the Shangguan family won't give up and will come to find father. They don't know that father has started everything, so at that time. You mean, your mother is no longer here? She was taken away by an alchemist called Dan Yangzi. Feng Xiao was a little startled. For a moment, he couldn't tell what he was feeling. More than 10 years had passed. Did she still remember him? Was she still the same as before? Would she still come back after going to the 8 Great Empires? She nodded and said, "Father, don't worry. I came back this time to tell you about this matter so that you can be on guard against the Shangguan clan. This time, I will go to the Danyang sect to look for mother in the 8 Great Empires. Don't worry. I will bring mother back for you. I know. You don't have to worry about the Shangguan family." Feng Xiao nodded. He had already begun to think about how to deal with this matter. Seeing this, Feng Zhou didn't say anything more. Leaving him alone in the hall, he left the palace and went to the mansion. In the following days, as the ghost doctor's identity as the princess of the Phoenix dynasty was made public, people from various countries sent gifts one after another. Not only did people from various countries send generous gifts, but even some of the big clans also sent people to send gifts, all for the sake of befriending them. These things, after all, and the ghost doctor. LOL. LOL, LOL. She first made arrangements for the Phoenix Guards, instructing them to protect the Phoenix dynasty while she was away, and to not let anyone invade their empire's territory if Fire Phoenix. With a soft call, a ray of light flashed out from the space and landed in front of her. Chapter 1233. Master. Fire Phoenix looked at her and revealed a joyful smile. He wanted to pounce over and hug her, but after thinking about it, he felt a little embarrassed. After all, he was already an adult now. He couldn't be hugged in her arms like when he was a child, with only a dudu covering his butt. Feng Zhou looked at Fire Phoenix, who had turned into a teenager, and felt as if he was watching a child grow up. Ever since Fire Phoenix started to meditate, he had never come out. That time when she entered the nascent soul stage and became a nascent soul stage cultivator, he also finally entered adulthood. Looking at this Fire Phoenix who was half a head taller than her, she couldn't hide the gentleness in her eyes. "Fire Phoenix, I called you out because I have something to discuss with you." She looked at him and the smile on her face disappeared. "You also know that I plan to go to the 8 Great Empires. But, I'm worried about the Phoenix dynasty. I'm worried about father and grandfather." Hearing this, Fire Phoenix's expression changed slightly. He asked, "Master wants me to stay and protect the Phoenix dynasty and them?" "That's right." She nodded and said, "You are the ancient divine beast Fire Phoenix. Our country is called the Phoenix dynasty. Back then, you were also born in the 9 volts forest. This is your home. If you were still an infant, it would be one thing. But now that you have successfully entered adulthood, I hope you can stay and be the Phoenix dynasty's divine beast protector." Divine beast protector. He looked at her and asked, "Then what about Master? If I stay and protect the Phoenix dynasty, who will protect Master? If Master is in danger in the 8 Great Empires, who can save Master?" This was what he was worried about. Perhaps Master could deal with everything alone here, but if he wasn't by her side in the 8 Great Empires, what would happen if Master was in danger? Thinking of this, he shook his head. "I don't agree. Compared to protecting the Phoenix dynasty and Master's family, I want to protect Master more. Even if he stayed in the space to meditate and didn't come out, if Master was in mortal danger, he would be able to sense it and would naturally come out to save her. But if he really stayed here as Master said, then even if he felt that Master was in danger, he wouldn't be able to save her. No, if I meet someone I can't beat, I can run. She took a step forward and patted him on the shoulder, saying, if you're here to guard this place, I'll be more at ease. You can stay here and cultivate if you have nothing to do. I've thought about it, and it won't take long. When I come back, if there's nothing major here, you can come with me. What do you think? What if you don't come back for many years? He asked in low spirits. Looking at her, she didn't plan to take him with her. Not for many years. Her bright eyes landed on Fire Phoenix as she said seriously, I still have to bring my mother back for my father. Don't worry, I'll be back in 3 years at most. Seeing this, he could only nod his head. You said it yourself. 3 years at most. If you don't come back in 3 years, I'll go look for you. He was indeed worried about her being alone outside, especially in the 8 great empires. She was only a nascent soul cultivator in that kind of place. If she encountered danger, he would be a little worried if he was not by her side. Chapter 1234. Being hugged by her, Fire Phoenix felt as if he was being hugged by her when he was young. He couldn't help but grin. To him, Fengjiu was his master, and more like a mother. He had been by her side since they were young. From the initial disdain and contempt, to later liking and acknowledging her from the bottom of his heart. Step by step, he was growing, and she was growing as well. Master, I won't be by your side to protect you. You must take good care of yourself. Don't get hurt. He was still worried and reminded her, 3 years. Remember to come back and pick me up in 3 years. I will. She replied with a smile. Only then did she bring him to the palace to tell her grandfather and father about this matter. Inside the palace, what? You want Fire Phoenix to stay and be the country's divine beast protector? How can that be? Feng Sanyuan and Feng Xiao objected after hearing her words, you don't have to worry about the Phoenix dynasty. Now that the various countries have come to congratulate us, those powers and clans only want to be on good terms with us. We will be fine here. But you, if you go to the 8 great empires alone, how can we be at ease without Fire Phoenix by your side? As he spoke, Feng Sanyuan waved his hand and shook his head, no, I don't agree to this. I don't agree, you have to bring Fire Phoenix with you. Feng Xiao also said, that's right, Xiaozhou. Don't worry here. From the current situation, there won't be any danger here. Although we are still a 6th-tier country, even the people from the 1st-tier countries won't be so stupid to attack us after we have such strength. Hearing their words, Fire Phoenix's eyes lit up. He looked at his master beside him. They didn't want him to stay. If his master agreed, then it would be great. He could go with his master to the 8 great empires. However, Fengjiu shook her head and said seriously, no, I'm not worried about the powers from the 1st-tier countries. I'm worried about the people from the 8 great empires. Her voice paused for a moment before she continued, the rise of the Phoenix Empire is too fast, it will definitely attract the jealousy of others. Even if the people from the other empires did not make a move, it is hard to guarantee that they will not secretly hire people to deal with us. If it is the experts from the 8 great empires, just one of them would be enough to destroy an entire empire. Speaking of this, her brows furrowed slightly. When I went to the Hell Mountain Range, I met a powerful cultivator whose strength was definitely above the nascent soul stage. If such a powerful cultivator wanted to take action, no matter how many Phoenix guards there were, they wouldn't be able to stop him. However, the Fire Phoenix is different. No matter how powerful a cultivator is, they wouldn't be a match for an adult primordial divine beast. With the growth of the Fire Phoenix now, its pressure can crush everything, including cultivators above the nascent soul stage. Hearing her words, the two men's faces turned grave. Indeed, what they had seen and encountered now was only the tip of the Golden Mountain. There were too many powerhouses in this world. If there were really powerhouses above the nascent soul realm, then would they have the strength to protect their dynasty? She looked at them and said, "That's why I want to keep the Fire Phoenix here for 3 years. If nothing major happens after 3 years, then it should be fine. Even if something happens, I can be at ease with the Fire Phoenix here." Feng Xiao and his father looked at each other, then looked at Fire Phoenix, then looked at Feng Zhou and asked, "But if the Fire Phoenix stays, then what will you do? If you go there alone, won't it be dangerous without the Fire Phoenix by your side in that kind of environment?" Chapter 12:35. Hearing this, they finally agreed. Her worries were reasonable as well. If someone really invited the experts of the 8 great empires to deal with their Phoenix dynasty, then no one would dare to step forward and help them. As for her, as long as she restrained her aura, there wouldn't be much of a problem. However, even they themselves didn't quite believe this, because no matter where she went, she wouldn't be peaceful. Sigh. Forget it, let her go out and explore. Now that things had come to this, they could only believe in her. Father, I've been back for a few days. I plan to leave in a few days and send Yi Jing back. Feng Zhou looked at the two and said, "I've already arranged everything on hand. I plan to leave the 8 Phoenix guards behind. This time, I'll only bring Leng Shuang, Leng Hua, and Du Fan. You're not bringing the Phoenix guards? You?" Feng Xiao was a bit worried, but before he could finish, he was interrupted. "Don't be so surprised. Leader Feng must have her reasons for not bringing them." Feng Sanyuan glared at him and then said to Feng Zhou, "Little Feng, tell us. Don't listen to your father." Hearing this, Feng Zhou smiled and said, "Because I'm not familiar with the place. The more ordinary it is, the less trouble it will attract. Even if Leng Shuang is here, I might ask her to make some changes. No matter what, we believe in your decision. However, you must remember, if you encounter danger and can't win, you must run. There's nothing more important than staying alive, understand?" Feng Sanyuan said in a deep voice. "Yes, I know." She nodded. "You must take good care of yourselves when I'm not home. Don't worry. We will." The two nodded and said. Thus, Feng Zhou bid farewell to her family a few days later and sent Yi Jing back. At the same time, they finally left for the 8 great empires. Not long after she left, the Shangguan family sent the 3rd elder to the Shangguan family. Feng Xiao had discussed with Feng Zhou that they would not acknowledge this marriage and give up on the idea. Even if Shangguan Wanrong came back in the future, they only wanted to recognize Shangguan Wanrong and not recognize the Shangguan family as relatives. Feng Zhou didn't bring the Fire Phoenix with him. Instead, he brought White, Blackie, and the 3 cloud-swallowing beasts with him. However, he kept them in his space because they weren't eye-catching. She thought that after arriving there, she would first buy a house in a town near the Danyang sect to house Leng Shuang and the other 2. The 8 great empires were mysterious to the people here. Not only were they extremely far away from here, but more importantly, the journey to the 8 great empires was dangerous. It was not easy to reach the 8 great empires. When the people from the Nebula sect came to select disciples, other than those who took the flying ship back, there were also some who directly used the teleportation formation to send their disciples back. The fastest way to go back and forth was indeed the teleportation formation. However, it required a large amount of spirit stones to activate the teleportation formation. It could be done in the blink of an eye. However, not all sects would use the teleportation formation. Even a large sect like the Nebula sect would only use the flying ship. This was because if they took the flying ship back, they could still explain the customs of the various places, as well as the things to pay attention to and the rules of the sect. At the same time, it was also to prepare them mentally for the change of identity. Chapter 1236. Ling Shuang, the thing inside is for you. It's a mask. She looked at her and said, your appearance is too outstanding, and you're a woman. With this kind of strength, it'll be hard for you to protect yourself without strength. Just wear this mask. With this mask, you won't be able to find you even if you walk into a crowd. Come, I'll teach you how to use it. Thank you, Master. Ling Shuang replied and took the mask. She walked to the side and put it on her face under her guidance. After putting on the mask, she touched her face, and her eyes couldn't help but flash. The mask on her face was like her own face. It didn't feel like she was wearing a mask at all. She just didn't know how she would feel after putting on the mask. Just as she was thinking, Ling Hua took out a mirror from his space and handed it over. Sister, look. Master made such a good mask. I couldn't even recognize you. Ling Shuang took the mirror and looked at it. She saw that her originally cold and elegant appearance was covered. Her current appearance could only be considered delicate and pretty. Seeing this, she smiled. Master, this mask is really good. I'll wear it all the time. What do you mean, wear it all the time? Fengjiu shook his head and smiled. This mask can't be worn all the time. You have to let the skin under the mask breathe occasionally. However, it's fine to wear it normally. Just remember, you have to take it off occasionally to breathe. Yes. She nodded. Du Fan's eyes lit up when he saw this. He looked at Fengjiu. Master, do you have any more masks like this? Can you give me one too? Look, I'm also very handsome. I'm also worried about being targeted. Hearing this, Fengjiu rolled his eyes. Do you think this is tofu on the street? You can have as many as you want. I only prepared one for Ling Shuang. None of you have one. Besides, didn't you call yourself a jade-faced scholar? Isn't this pretty good? I was thinking that this treasure of yours is good. It's like I'm a different person wearing it. He smiled embarrassedly. He was just envious of the good stuff. Alright, you don't have to be envious. I've prepared everything for you. As she spoke, she took out something from her space. These things are for you. Here are some defensive magic treasures and some life-saving pills. Come, take them. She distributed the things to the three of them and said, act according to the plan we talked about on the way here. First, buy a house in the nearest city to the Danyang sect. It's best if you can set up a shop to sell some herbs and other things. Anyway, let's settle down first and get familiar with the place. Don't worry, Master, we will. The few of them responded and happily put away the things she gave them carefully. These things were definitely expensive outside, but their master gave them to them so casually. Wait for me. Ling Shuang, come with me. She instructed them and had Du Fan's Ling Hua stay behind. She and Ling Shuang went to the forest. Not long after, the two of them walked out. Feng Zhou, who was originally dressed in red, had changed her appearance. Her face was slightly modified, and she changed out of her red clothes and put on a green one. She looked much less radiant. Alright, let's go. Wearing red clothes was too conspicuous. It was possible that the people from Xianyuan Mo's would discover them. She wanted to find an opportunity to secretly check on his current situation. She couldn't let him know that she was already here. Chapter 1237. When he received the news from above to report Fengjiu's recent situation, he sent his subordinates to investigate. After this investigation, His subordinates found out that after returning to the Phoenix dynasty, the ghost doctor seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Therefore, they hurriedly reported this news to Ren Xiang. What? Disappeared? How could she disappear? Didn't I tell you to keep an eye on her? Ren Xiang frowned, angrily glared at the people below, and shouted, even if you lost her, you should know which country she went to, right? Hearing this, the people kneeling below lowered their heads even more, not daring to open their mouths. You don't know. Ren Xiang's voice slightly raised, somewhat stunned and angrily scolded. What do you eat? Such a big person, but you don't know where she went. You don't even know which country she went to. Why aren't you going to find her for me? What are you doing here foolishly? Yes. The kneeling people quickly retreated, not daring to stay any longer. Where could she have gone? Could she have gone to a first-class country? Ren Xiang walked back and forth in the courtyard with his hands behind his back, while muttering, when she went to the 2-star academy, she just advanced to the golden core stage. This year has passed, I don't know if her strength has increased, at this time, where could she have gone? However, with her strength and reputation, as long as she didn't go to the depths of the Earth Vein mountain range, there shouldn't be anyone here who would make a move against her. He wasn't worried about the danger, but if his master wanted news of her, what could he give them? Directly send the news that he didn't know where the ghost doctor went. He estimated that once this news was sent back, he would suffer a calamity. But if he didn't send the news back, he would also be in trouble. Thinking about it, it was better to report the truth. Otherwise, it would be the same if the higher-up sent someone down. Therefore, he turned and walked into the room, and not long after, he sent the news out. Compared to Fingzhou, who took 3 months to reach the 8 great empires, Ren Xiang's news only took about a month, and Xianyuan Mo's received the news. After the matters in the palace were settled, Xianyuan Mo's returned to his mansion. Xianyuan dynasty was one of the 8 great empires. The ruler of a country was called the Saint Emperor. The Saint Emperor ruled a country, and his spiritual power covered every inch of the Xianyuan dynasty. Of course, those sects were exceptions. Among the 8 great empires, only those sects were not included in the territories of the various empires. They had their own boundaries and did not belong to any of the empires, nor were they managed by any of the empires. In the current Xianyuan Empire, other than the Sage Emperor, Xianyuan Mo's had the greatest authority. However, he left after dealing with the matters in the palace and did not stay in the palace. In his own mansion, he stood by the pond with his hands clasped behind his back. Thinking about the news that Ren Xiang had sent someone to bring him, he frowned. How could he not find her? Then where would she go? When he heard the news last time that she actually brought a few people to the Hell Mountain range with her golden core cultivation, his heart was in his throat, fearing that she would encounter danger there. She, a mere gold core cultivator, actually dared to enter such a place. One had to know that if she was not careful, she would die inside. But thinking about it, that was indeed something she would do. With her personality, what else would she not dare to do? Fortunately, she came out safely in the end. But now, where did she go? Chapter 1238. At the same time, in the imperial city of the Xianyuan Empire, a skinny figure dressed in a shabby beggar's robe was entering through the city gates. Her face was obviously smeared with dust and dirt, but her eyes were exceptionally bright. She was looking around with a crafty and clever look. This person was none other than Fingzhou, who had the hobby of disguising himself as a beggar. When they arrived at the city closest to the Danyang sect, they asked around and found out that the Danyang sect would only recruit disciples in the spring of next year. Thus, when she saw that she couldn't enter the Danyang sect, she decided to target Xianyuan Mo's. She thought that since she couldn't go in to look for her mother, she might as well look for Xianyuan Mo's first. While she was at it, she might as well give him a last-minute surprise. She wanted to see if he had taken advantage of her absence to hug beauties left and right. Thus, after settling Ling Shuang, the others, and the little beasts in the residence they bought, she inquired about Xianyuan Mose and came to the imperial city. She heard that although Xianyuan Mose was the crown prince, he didn't live in the palace, but in a residence in the imperial city. As she walked, she thought about how to sneak into the residence. Although she could directly reveal her identity or find Hui Lang's shadow and swagger in, wouldn't that be a lot less fun? She actually wanted to know if he would be able to recognize her if she disguised herself and sneaked into his residence. When she thought of this, she felt a faint trace of excitement in her heart. However, his residence was bound to be heavily guarded, so it wouldn't be easy for her to sneak in. Thus, she used the identity of a beggar to travel back and forth in the imperial city, asking around for information. Occasionally, she would go to a place far away from his residence to sit and eat a bun while thinking of an idea. In this way, 3 days passed in a row. Sometimes she would see Hui Lang going in and out, but she didn't see Xianyuan Mose coming out. On the morning of the 3rd day, she followed behind the old man who came out of the crown prince's residence to buy things. She overheard the conversation between him and the person beside him. "A distant nephew of mine is coming. I begged the steward to arrange a servant position for him in the manor. He will probably arrive at noon. Go to the city gate and pick him up for me. I still have a lot of work to do after I go back. I don't have time to pick him up personally. But I don't know your nephew. If you want me to help you pick someone up, you should at least tell me something special." The tall and skinny man said. Characteristics. It's hard to say what he looks like. I've only seen him once when he was 7 or 8 years old. So many years have passed, how would I know what he looks like now? But I said in the letter that he should tie a red cloth around his hand. You should be able to recognize him if you wait at the city gate. All right. I got it. The tall and thin man responded while helping to purchase the items. Fingzhou, who was eating a fruit at the back, crunched on it loudly. Her eyes darted around as an idea suddenly appeared in her mind. She glanced at the 2 people walking in front of her. They were 2 Peak Foundation establishment cultivators, but they were only servants in the residence who bought things. These days, when she was in the city, she saw that the peddlers and people in the shops on the streets were mostly Foundation establishment and Golden Core cultivators. Some of those people were waiters in restaurants, some were guards in shops, and some were hawkers on the streets. It could be said that it was an eye-opener for her. Chapter 1239. As for nascent soul cultivators, there were actually shopkeepers here, which made her speechless. A nascent soul cultivator who was the head of a family or even an ancestor in a first-class country was actually a shopkeeper here. It was really amazing. However, after a few days, she calmed down a lot. She already knew that where there were strong people, there were also weak people. However, she didn't expect that the so-called weak people here were doing menial work. Although that was the case, with a nascent soul cultivator here, most people wouldn't dare to mess around here. She thought to herself as she walked while biting the fruit. She came to a place where there was no one and changed her clothes. After wiping the dust off her face, she turned into a young man in ordinary clothes. She was wearing a green robe, and her eyes were smart and cunning with a hint of calculation. Then, she walked towards the city gate. After waiting for a few days, she finally had this opportunity. Of course, she had to seize it. She waited at the city gate from morning until noon, but she didn't see anyone coming. She couldn't help but feel anxious. Could this person have gotten lost? Or not coming? Then wouldn't her plan be ruined? Just as she was thinking, she saw a figure dragging a sack into the city. The hand that was tied with a red cloth was holding the sack. As he walked, he looked around as if he was looking for someone. Seeing this, Fengjiu quickly walked forward and pulled him to the side. You're what's your name again? I'm Dinyo. Did my uncle ask you to pick me up? Oh. Yes, it's Dinyo. It's Dinyo. Fengjiu patted his head and laughed. Look at my brain, I actually remembered this name wrong. But it's good that I picked you up. Hee, yes. It's good that you picked me up. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to wait for you. He put down the sack on his shoulder and grinned. My father asked me to bring this to my uncle. You big fool, you're still smiling so happily. Let me tell you, you're in big trouble. Fengjiu lowered his voice and said to him, your uncle sent me here to tell you to go home quickly. You lost your position. This is the money he wants you to take home. Take it. She took out a bag and stuffed it into the young man's hand. Also, your uncle said that you shouldn't write to him for the next few months. He'll contact you once the storm is over. Ah. Really? The young man's face paled. He was a little scared. Yes, where's his letter to you? She asked. It's here. He quickly took it out and handed it to Fengjiu. And that's good enough. You should go back quickly. I'll pass this bag to your uncle. She gestured and took off the red cloth on his hand, urging him to leave quickly. The young man saw that there was money to be earned and heard that there was danger. Naturally, he did not dare to stay and hurriedly left. Seeing him leave the city, Fengjiu smiled and narrowed his eyes. He quickly tied the cloth on his arm and carried the bag to the city gate to wait. After about half an incense stick's worth of time, the tall and thin man came to the city gate. He saw the young man with the red cloth tied to his hand sitting in the corner and quickly ran over. You're that Dinyo? That's me. Fengjiu responded. He looked at the tall and thin man and happily asked, did my uncle send you to pick me up? Where's my uncle? Why didn't he come? Chapter 1240. He glanced at Fengjiu and asked, where's the letter? It's here. She took out the letter from her bosom and handed it to him. The tall and thin man took the letter and read it, then nodded, follow me. When you get to the mansion, someone will teach you the rules. As he spoke, he glanced at the bag at the side and asked, what's that? It's a local specialty. I brought it for my uncle. She grinned. Hearing this, he frowned in disdain. All right, carry it and let's go. Thus, Fengjiu carried the bag and followed behind the man, entering Xianyuan Mo's mansion from the back door. The tall and thin man brought Fengjiu in front of the old man and said, I've brought the person, and also brought you some local specialties. As he spoke, he glanced at the youth carrying the big bag, shook his head and turned to leave. The old man looked at the youth in front of him and was a little surprised. You're Dinyo? Yes, uncle. You don't recognize me. I saw you once when I was 7 or 8 years old. Fengjiu smiled and squinted her eyes as she spoke. The way she called him uncle was so smooth that people who didn't know would take it seriously. This is the local specialties I brought for you, please take a look. She bent down slightly and was about to open the bag. All right, no need to look, come with me. As he spoke, he led her to the servants' room and said, I begged the housekeeper for a long time before he agreed to this job. Once you're in here, it's different from outside. You have to do things seriously and do whatever the master tells you to do. In this mansion, we're servants, so we can't raise our heads to look at the master. That's rude behavior. If you don't do it well, you'll lose your life. All right, I understand. She followed at the side and curiously looked around as she walked. She could feel that there were no hidden guards in this place because this was the place where the servants lived. The places where there were hidden guards were usually the courtyard where the masters lived, as well as some important places in the manor. This is where the servants live. You can walk around as you please. Follow me later. I'll tell you where you can't enter without permission. With that, the old man pointed to a room in front of them and said, "This is the room. I've prepared the clothes for you inside. Here, servants need to wear servants' clothes. Go in and change. I'll wait for you here." "All right, I got it." She nodded and walked in. Seeing that it was a simple single room, she quickly changed her clothes and walked out. She followed the old man to familiarize herself with the area. At the same time, she was told that the inner courtyard was an important place and that she was not allowed to enter without the master's summons. When she heard that, she couldn't help but be a little startled. Didn't that mean that even if she wanted to see Xianyuanmo's here, it would be difficult? It couldn't be, right? Dainyu. What are you looking at? That place is the main courtyard, the master's courtyard. You can't casually look at it. The old man said, indicating for him to quickly leave. Fengzhou's mouth twitched. Can't I just look around a courtyard? Would it kill him to take a look? She cursed in her heart. Just as she was about to leave with him, she heard a familiar voice. "That brat over there, come over here." Fengzhou stopped and turned around to see the person walking over. He was dressed in tight clothes and had a familiar face. There was no doubt that it was Hui Lang. They hadn't seen each other for a few years, but he still had that annoying look on his face. Seeing him, she couldn't help but reveal an imperceptible smile. An acquaintance. Chapter 1241. Fengzhou glanced at him and grinned, coming. Guard captain, he's new." Before the old man could finish his words, he saw that the person had been taken away. Seeing this, he couldn't help but worry. He was taken to the inner courtyard on his first day here. If something happened, would that child, Dainyu, be able to deal with it? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but want to take a look. But after taking a step forward, he restrained himself. This was the manor. There shouldn't be anything wrong, right? Thinking about it, he decided to wait and see. If there really wasn't anything, he would go find the housekeeper. On the other side, Fengzhou followed behind Hui Lang, but she didn't look around. Because she felt that there were many auras in here, they should be hidden guards hiding here. If looking around made them suspicious, then all her efforts would be in vain. "Go, scrub that outhouse clean." He brought Fengzhou to an outhouse and stood to the side, pinching his nose. With a look of disgust, he motioned for Fengzhou to quickly scrub the outhouse clean. "Ah! Scrub the outhouse." Fengzhou was a little dumbfounded. Hui Lang didn't recognize her when he first met her, and instead brought her here to scrub the outhouse and wash the toilet bowls. This ingrate, he really needed to be taught a lesson. "Yes. Hurry up, hurry up." He pinched his nose and looked around. At this moment, when he saw Yingyi walking over, his face suddenly changed. "Why are you here?" Yingyi walked over and glanced at Fengzhou. He didn't recognize her and just saw that she was an ordinary servant, so he didn't pay attention to her. Everyone in the manor had been strictly investigated. Naturally, no one else would sneak in. Even if there was, they wouldn't be able to sneak into the inner courtyard where the master was. "The master punished you to scrub the outhouse and wash the toilet bowls. Is this how you get punished? If the master finds out, you'll at least be whipped a few times. If you don't say it, no one will. If you don't say it, the master won't know." Hui Lang stared at him and smiled. "Shadow, we've been friends for many years. Don't you think? Master told me to keep an eye on you, so I have to keep an eye on you." As he spoke, he gestured to Fengzhou. "All right, you can leave. Fengjiu nodded and responded. Just as he was about to leave, Hui Lang stopped him. No. Who's going to clean the latrine if you leave? And who's going to wash the bathtub? You only know how to get new servants to do your work. Does everyone in the inner court avoid you? Yi glanced at Hui Lang and said. She saw through his thoughts with a single glance. Although there were many hidden guards in the inner courtyard, there were only 2 manservants who acted as assistants. Because their master liked peace and quiet and didn't like too many people talking, he kept the 2 of them by his side. Now that he was punished, he naturally didn't dare to order the 2 manservants around. Because the 2 of them served by their master's side, no matter how bold he was, he didn't dare to act rashly. Yi glanced at him and then narrowed his eyes, saying, the master said that since you didn't wash it yourself this time, you'll be punished even more severely later. Hearing this, Hui Lang's body stiffened. No way. Whether it's true or not, you should know. Yi said and looked at the manservant on the side, ordering, you can leave. Yes. Fengjiu responded and then moved to leave. When she walked out of the inner courtyard, she stopped and looked back, revealing a smile. Chapter 1242. As for Hui Lang, she looked in the same direction as the corners of her lips curled up into a faint smile. He dared to make her scrub the toilet. Hui Lang's guts had grown. She returned to the outer courtyard and the old man heaved a sigh of relief. You scared me to death. Thank goodness you're all right. The old man patted his chest and said, why did the guard call you over? Did anything happen? Nothing happened. It seems like he was punished by his master to scrub the toilet and he wanted me to scrub it. She smiled and asked, Uncle, what do I usually do? You're new here, so you can only do odd jobs in the outer courtyard. Let's go. I'll bring you to see the butler. He gestured for Fengjiu to follow him. Butler. Her eyes flickered, and then she followed behind him. The butler of the Crown Prince's residence could not be an ordinary person. Therefore, she was looking forward to seeing what kind of person the butler was. When she followed the old man to the front courtyard, she saw a young man instructing the servants in the residence. Yes, that person looked to be around 25 or 26 years old. He had an air of nobility, but the servants in the residence called him the butler. Butler, this is my nephew, Li Daniu. The old man introduced and pulled Fengjiu forward. Quickly kneel down to the butler and thank him for giving you this opportunity. Ah. Fengjiu stood there in a daze and looked at the man like a country bumpkin. What awe? I told you to kneel down to the butler. The old man turned around and said. Hearing this, Fengjiu shook her head and blinked her clear and innocent eyes. No, my father said that I can't kneel to anyone. Moreover, the people who kneel in the countryside are all dead. I've never kneeled to a living person. Hearing this, the old man almost fainted. He stared blankly and raised his hand to hit Fengjiu's head. You idiot! However, before he could touch Fengjiu, she covered her head and moved away. When the man saw this, he smiled and waved his hand. That's enough. He's just a child. Why bother with him? He turned to look at Fengjiu and asked, You're called Li Daniu? He found it funny that such a skinny young man was called Daniu. Yes. Fengjiu stood properly and looked at him timidly. Are you afraid of me? The man asked with a smile, his voice gentle. Hearing this, Fengjiu shook his head and said weakly, I'm not afraid of you. I'm only afraid that you'll chase me away. I don't want to go home and farm. Ha ha ha, I won't. As long as you work hard, I won't chase you back home to farm. The man chuckled and said, From now on, you'll be called Little Li in this mansion. Yes, Butler Xia. She grinned, and her smile made her disguised face look exceptionally dazzling. When the man saw this, his eyes flashed and he was a little surprised. He thought to himself, this young man's eyes are really dazzling. However, this young man looks like a simple and innocent person. He can be reassured to use such a person. Thus, he asked again, has his work been arranged? His gaze fell on the old man. This old servant will let him do odd jobs in the outer courtyard. This newcomer has never learned before and is clumsy. I'm afraid that he won't do well, so I'll let him do some odd jobs to familiarize himself with. Odd jobs. Chapter 1243. The old man was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly replied, yes. You may leave. He waved his hand. Seeing this, the old man bowed with Fengzhou and retreated. When they were some distance away, he looked at Fengzhou from head to toe and said, you're really lucky. Many people in the outer courtyard want to enter the inner courtyard but can't. You've only been here for half a day and the steward has already allowed you to enter the inner courtyard. I really couldn't tell that you were such a lucky person. Hearing this, Fengzhou grinned and scratched his head in embarrassment. It's the steward's good taste. Wasn't it his good taste? He knew to transfer her to the inner courtyard to water the flowers and sweep the floor. Compared to Hui Lang, this steward was much more reliable. But, where did this steward come from? He didn't look like a normal person. Thus, she said, Uncle, this steward looks like a noble young master outside. What do you mean by, like a noble young master outside? The steward is a noble young master. The old man said and lowered his voice, Uncle will tell you. This steward in our residence is surnamed Yang and named Yong. He's the second young master of the Yang family in the imperial city. However, he's been following our master and has been a steward in the residence for many years. Oh, so that's how it is. He gave up being a noble young master and ran over to be Xianyuan Mo's steward. What a weirdo. Alright, let's go. I'll take you to find the steward of the inner courtyard. The steward outside is Uncle, but the inner courtyard is not under Uncle's control. You have to be smart. If something happens, Uncle won't be able to save you. And, I know Uncle. Don't worry. She replied with a smile and followed him inside. The next morning, she woke up before the sun rose. After washing up, she went to the garden to water the flowers. Then, she took a broom and swept the floor from time to time. From time to time, she looked around and saw that there were servant girls in the outer courtyard. However, the inner courtyard was filled with men. Were they really not attracted to women? There wasn't even a servant girl walking around in the inner courtyard. Did they only use manservants? She was surprised as she scanned the front yard of the main courtyard. However, before she could get close, she was sent away. This is the master's courtyard, there are people who clean it. You can go elsewhere. The guard said in a deep voice, staring at the Fengzhou who was holding the broom. Oh, Fengzhou replied. He poked his head out to take a look as he walked away. When she arrived at the garden and saw that there was no one around, she went to the stone steps and sat down. Even her house wasn't so heavily guarded. It was really difficult to get close to him. She hadn't even seen his shadow since yesterday. Wouldn't it be a waste of time if she continued to waste time like this? She rested her chin on her hands and thought for a while. Then, her eyes darted around. Why don't we explore deeper at night? However, other than the nascent soul cultivators in the mansion, there seemed to be a few very strong auras. There should be cultivators above the nascent soul stage guarding the mansion. If she was mistaken for an assassin and killed, wouldn't it be a great injustice? Hearing the sound of footsteps approaching, she quickly stood up and took a few steps to squat down in the flower bushes. She pulled out the weeds while paying attention to the people coming. I didn't hear any news about the ghost doctor. So the master's temper hasn't been good these past few days. So I was punished by the master to wash the toilet because of a small matter. What is this Rinxiang doing? He's far away so the master can't fix him, but I'm close. I've become a ready-made punching bag. Chapter 1244. They would never have guessed that she was already here and had even snuck into the manor. What are you doing there? Hui Lang noticed the figure squatting in front of the flowers and raised his voice to ask. Fingzhou turned around and grinned. I'm weeding. It's you. Hui Lang glared. Aren't you from the outer courtyard? Why are you in the inner courtyard? The steward let me in. I'm in charge of sweeping, watering and weeding this area. Yang Yong let you in. Hui Lang muttered strangely, since when can a newcomer sneak into the inner courtyard? Ying Yi saw this and said, didn't you drag him in yesterday? That's different. There's nothing different. As he spoke, he glanced at Fingzhou and then looked away. Yang Yong has crossed his goal, so he naturally trusts you. Let's go. Hui Lang also looked away and didn't pay any more attention to him. Yang Yong was the steward and under his management, there had never been any accidents. His ability was obvious to all. If he could let someone in, then it should be fine. Seeing them leave, Fingzhou squatted back to weeding from time to time. After staying in the inner courtyard for a few days, she still didn't see Xianyuan mows. This made her a little angry. On this day, she went to sweep in front of the courtyard again, thinking that he should have come out by now, right? Or did she not see him when he came out? At this time, she didn't know that on the other side, in a courtyard in the inner courtyard, Yang Yong looked at the old man in front of him and asked, how is it? After being in the inner courtyard for a few days, the most frequent place is Master's main courtyard. When no one is around, he slacks off. When someone passes by, he pretends to sweep with a broom. Last night, he even fell asleep in the flowers. This morning, he went to sweep in front of Master's courtyard again. From the initial observation, it can be concluded that there is a problem with this person, and he is definitely targeting Master. The old man's voice was low and serious. He looked at Yang Yong. Should we get rid of him? Hearing this, Yang Yong smiled warmly and asked, did you see him harm anyone? Not at the moment, but he has ulterior motives. What about strength and cultivation? Can't you feel it? Yang Yong asked again. No, maybe it's because he's cultivating a concealment technique. I can't sense his cultivation level. Hearing this, Yang Yong nodded. I understand. You may leave. I'll take care of it. Seeing this, the old man nodded and turned around to leave. After a slight pause, Yang Yong stood up, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked out. Only then did he circle around the fake mountain, pass through the courtyard, and come to a place not far from the main courtyard, where he saw that figure sweeping the floor with a leisurely and lazy look. Looking at the young man, his hand moved slightly, and a silver needle as thin as a strand of hair shot out without warning towards the young man. He watched quietly and saw that the lazy-looking youth didn't even turn her head. She only tilted her head slightly, and the silver needle brushed past her cheek and sank into the trunk of a large tree not far away. The needle penetrated 3 centimeters deep into the trunk of the tree. Seeing this, Fingzhou's eyes moved slightly, and he turned around to look. Housekeeper. Seeing this, Yang Yong nodded and walked over, asking in a warm voice, are you used to this place? The young man's unexpectedly sharp senses surprised him. He didn't even turn his head, and easily avoided the silver needle shot out by him. Chapter 1245. I'm all right. She replied with a smile. Come with me for a walk. Phone 9 smiled appreciatively when she saw the figure walking away after leaving her words behind. He really wasn't an ordinary person. Compared to Hui Lang, he wasn't just a little more astute. He was able to tell that something was amiss so quickly. However, she had only wandered around in front of the main courtyard. Was it that obvious? She thought to herself, but continued to follow the figure in front of her. She hadn't expected that Xianyuan Mose hadn't even seen her yet. His steward had already seen through her. She had wanted to give him a surprise. It looked like there was no chance this time. At that moment, neither of them noticed that Xianyuan Mose, who was standing at the window of a nearby building, had inadvertently caught sight of the figure following behind Yang Yong. When he saw that figure, his heart skipped a beat. He leaned forward slightly to take a closer look. A look of astonishment appeared in his deep eyes. Feng Zhou. Why was she here? This woman had actually snuck into the 8 great empires without a word. She had even snuck into his residence. Although they were a little far apart, he could still recognize her at a glance. It wasn't because of that face. That face belonged to a completely unfamiliar person. She must have done something to it. What made him recognize her was her figure and the habit of her movements. Although they hadn't seen each other in the past 2 to 3 years, her every move, frown, and smile had long been deeply imprinted in his mind. He could recognize her every movement and back. Seeing her following behind Yang Yong, the distance between them was less than 3 steps apart. His face immediately darkened, and he felt as if a jar of vinegar had been knocked over in his heart, causing him to fume with sourness. This woman, instead of cultivating properly over there, she actually snuck over here. He had clearly told her that she couldn't come here unless she was a nascent soul cultivator. Furthermore, she was the one who had mentioned the 10-year promise. She actually snuck over. At this moment, he had completely forgotten that when he had suffered from the backlash of his strength, he had taken advantage of the fact that his body had shrunk due to the loss of his cultivation method to sneak back to see her. Furthermore, he had taken advantage of her quite a bit. Right now, his eyes seemed to be on fire as he stared at the 2 people below. Because the 2 of them had already approached the pavilion, he couldn't hear what they were saying due to the distance, and he couldn't see the expressions on their faces due to the angle. He only knew that the distance between the 2 of them had been shortened again. At this moment, he could not help but let his imagination run wild. What was Yang Yong talking to her about? How could Hui Lang and the others not know that Feng Zhou is here? And Yang Yong, as a housekeeper, why did he go to the pavilion with her, who was wearing a servant's uniform? What was he trying to do? Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, there was another scene in the pavilion. Sit. Yang Yong gestured for him to sit. Feng Zhou did not stand on ceremony and sat down. Who are you? He asked directly. His voice was as gentle as ever, without the slightest hint of fierceness. However, Feng Zhou knew that this Yang Yong was not as gentle and harmless as he appeared on the surface. The more he was like this, the more shrewd and powerful he was. To be able to become a housekeeper, you are indeed not a simple person. She rested her chin on one hand and smiled. Actually, you don't have to ask me who I am. Because even if I told you, I don't think you would believe me. Chapter 1246. Hearing this, Feng Zhou's eyes began to spin and a glint flashed across her eyes. She stared at the person in front of her and smiled. I'm here to look for your master. Yang Yong nodded. I know you're here to look for my master, but do you know him? Why are you looking for him? It was because the youth in front of him did not have any killing intent, or at least, he did not sense any malicious intent from him. That was why he did not order his men to kill him, but instead brought him here to question him. I know him. If you don't, why are you looking for him? I wanted to give him a surprise, but who knew that your place would be so tightly guarded? I've been here for several days and I haven't even seen him once. Speaking to this point, she could not help but sigh. You still haven't told me, who are you? He asked again. Me? My name is Fingzhou. She said with a smile, looking at his stunned expression with satisfaction. You're the ghost doctor. The ghost doctor Fingzhou, as one of his master's trusted aides, naturally knew of this person. Furthermore, this was a woman, and one that his master liked. But this youth in front of him was a woman. No need to look, I'm a woman. Here, let me show you this. She propped up her chin with one hand and took out a token with the other. Yanling. That token was the master's Yanling, a token that could mobilize the Yanling's forces. He never thought that his master would give this to her. From the looks of it, she was indeed the ghost Dr. Fingzhou. At this moment, he could not help but feel a lingering fear. It was a good thing that he did not immediately send people to kill her, otherwise, even if he died 100 times, he would not be able to atone for his sins. His gaze fell on her face and asked, You've changed your appearance. Not really, I've just done a little. She put away the Yanling, then smiled at him and said in a negotiating tone, Housekeeper, please don't expose me. I'm having fun. Hearing this, Yang Yong couldn't help but laugh. You're too reckless. If you want to see Master, you just have to take out the Yen decree and no one will stop you. If something happens to you and you're treated as a spy or an assassin, the consequences will be very serious. Also, I really don't see what's so fun about this. He shook his head and looked at her servant's uniform. He smiled and said, Is it fun to be a servant? A manservant like you won't be able to get close to the master. So. That's why I cooperated and told you my identity. Otherwise, I would have gone to Hui Lang a long time ago. But, that guy isn't as smart as you. Speaking of her, she laughed again. Anyway, I won't do anything to your master. Just pretend that you don't know. Don't expose me to him, or else, hee. Alright. I was originally worried that you might be a spy or an assassin, so I tested you. Since you're the ghost Dr. Fingzhou, I naturally won't say anything else. At this point, he looked at her and said, Perhaps you don't know, but Master said to us, his trusted aides, that you will be our future mistress, so we have to treat you with the same respect as we treat him. So, I will do as you say. Hearing this, Fingzhou was slightly surprised. Looking at his serious expression and hearing his words, her heart couldn't help but tremble. He actually said that. This meant that he had decided on her in this life. Chapter 1247. Seeing this, Yang Yong smiled and said, I heard Hui Lang and the others say that Ren Xiang couldn't find the ghost doctor's whereabouts and didn't even know where the ghost doctor went. Also, I heard Master mention that the ghost doctor has a 10-year agreement with Master. Also, she can't come here if she hasn't reached the nascent soul stage. That's right. The 10-year agreement is a test for your master. She smiled lightly. I snuck in this time to see if he's hugging women behind my back when I wasn't around. But after entering this place, there isn't even a single woman in the inner courtyard. Wouldn't this cause an imbalance of yin and yang? Hearing this, even Yang Yong couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at the person in front of him who had a sly look in her eyes and couldn't help but laugh softly. You're really thinking too much. Master has never been close to women. There are servant girls outside the residence, but there aren't any in the inner courtyard. The ones who are ordered around are usually servants. I'm afraid your sudden inspection will be disappointing. Nonsense, if I'm not disappointed, then should I be pleasantly surprised to see him hugging a woman? She rolled her eyes speechlessly and said, I came here to do something, but it just so happens that there are still a few days left, so I came to see him first. That's right, has his cold poison really been cured? Last time I heard Ren Xiang and Hui Lang say that it's been cured. How was it cured? I haven't even found a way to cure his cold poison yet. It's been cured. Actually, Master's cultivation method is of the utmost yang, or else he wouldn't have been able to suppress that 1,000-year-old cold poison after so many years. The reason he couldn't cure it before was because Master's cultivation method wasn't complete. And during that time, those powers were also targeting Master. There was one time when Master beat them at their own game and made them think that they had succeeded, so he took the opportunity to go into seclusion. Later on, when Master's cultivation was complete, he used the cultivation method in his body to force out the cold poison. However, because of this, he lost quite a bit of his cultivation method, and at that time. At this point, he paused and glanced at her. He only smiled and didn't continue speaking. What happened at that time? Feng Jiu was listening and seeing that he didn't continue, he couldn't help but feel strange. It's all in the past, there's no need to talk about it. That's right, you said that you have something to do here. Do you need my help? He changed the topic, thinking that it was better not to talk about how his master had shrunk due to the loss of his cultivation method. I don't need your help, but I have to stay here for a few months. After a few months, I still have to deal with my own matters. Once I leave, I probably won't be able to find him for a while. I won't be staying in the Imperial City for long, so if he doesn't recognize me, there's no need to talk about me coming here. All right. He nodded. If there's anything I can help with, just let me know. I still have people who can help. Yes, I know. She smiled and then asked curiously, I heard that you are the second son of a big family. But why did he come here to be his butler? Does your family agree? Yang Yong smiled warmly. I'm the second son, so there's no need for me to take over the family. My clansmen naturally won't object. Furthermore, it's good to be by Master's side. I've learned quite a few things here. Being a butler in his residence may not necessarily be worse than being the head of the family outside. Feng Jiu nodded. That's true. After all, his status is not ordinary. You're both a butler and a trusted aide, so you won't lose out to being the head of the family outside. Chapter 1248. No need, the place I'm living in now is quite good. Moreover, special treatment can't be hidden in this manner, so don't give me too much preferential treatment. She waved her hand and stood up. If there's nothing else, I'm going back to sweep the floor. As she spoke, she walked out of the pavilion. As if she thought of something, she turned around and asked, That's right, how come I don't see your master? Master should be in the attic, the tallest building in the manor. He walked out and pointed in the direction of the attic. The moment Feng Jiu walked out, Xianyuan Mose, who had been watching from the window, quickly took a step back and hid to the side, not letting them notice that he had been watching here for more than an hour. What were these two talking about? They actually chatted for so long. Xianyuan Mose leaned against the wall and thought for a while. When he saw the two leave through the crack, he turned around and walked out. Seeing the two figures leave, his deep eyes flashed. After pausing in the attic for a while, he walked down. His heart was happy to see her again after more than 2 years, but he was also angry. He was angry that she didn't listen to him and wait until she entered the nascent soul stage before coming. If something happened here and he wasn't by her side, what should he do? However, this anger couldn't compare to the joy and excitement in his heart. Even if he had a stern and dignified face, even if he tried his best to keep a cold face, his slightly pursed lips couldn't hide his good mood. Since she sneaked in and didn't come to find him, then he would go find her. Since she wanted to play, he would play with her. He wanted to see who would be the first to reveal their identity. When he arrived downstairs, Xianyuan Mose walked towards the main courtyard. He originally thought that Feng Zhou, who had left the pavilion, would be sweeping the floor in front of the main courtyard, but who would have thought that not even half a shadow could be seen. "Master, what are you doing here?" Hui Lang walked over from behind. Seeing his master standing there with his hands behind his back and looking around, he couldn't help but ask curiously. He also looked around, but didn't see anything. When Xianyuan Mose heard his words, he turned around to look at him, then walked into the courtyard. When he reached the courtyard, he did not return to his room. Instead, he sat down at the table in the courtyard. When Hui Lang saw this, he signaled the servant in the courtyard to serve the meal. At the same time, he exchanged glances with Hui Lang. The two of them gestured for the servant to come forward and ask what was going on. In the end, Ying Yi had no choice but to step forward and ask, "Master, what's wrong? Why did he look so listless this early in the morning? Did you not rest well?" Xianyuan Mose didn't say anything. He just tapped the table lightly with one hand while thinking about how to get her to his side. It wasn't until he saw a lot of food and desserts on the table that an idea flashed through his mind. "Hui Lang, go find a servant to taste the food," he said with a straight face. He sat upright and didn't move his chopsticks. Hearing this, Hui Lang was stunned for a moment. "Taste the food. I can taste the food." As he spoke, he walked forward and rolled up his sleeves to pick up the food with his chopsticks. He opened his mouth and was about to put the food into his mouth. Unexpectedly, at this time, a familiar and dignified cold voice sounded. "Go away." Xianyuan Mose glanced at him with disdain. "Go find a servant. In the future, he will be responsible for this monarch's 3 meals a day," he ordered in a deep voice. Chapter 1249. Not long after, Hui Lang came in with a servant. "Master, how is he?" Xianyuan Mose looked up and frowned. "Change it." "Yes." He was surprised, but he still responded and went out to look for it. "Master, how is this?" Hui Lang came in with another servant. "Change it again." This time, even Ying Yi was slightly surprised. He looked at the manservant and then looked at his master, feeling strange in his heart. His master usually didn't ask people to taste his food. Why was he acting strangely today? "Servant," he thought to himself, and a thought flashed through his mind. Could it be the new servant? A new servant came to the inner courtyard recently, and he was transferred in by Yang Yong. Was his master looking for him? Therefore, when Hui Lang was about to go out to search again, he said, "I'll go look for him." Then, under Hui Lang's astonished gaze, he left with the servant. After leaving the main courtyard, he asked where the new servant went. "Guarding, the new servant is called Xiao Li. It's mealtime now, so I think he went to the kitchen," a guard said. "Yes, he should be in the kitchen. This guy always goes to the kitchen at the right time. If we can't find him now, he must be in the kitchen," another guard beside him said. Hearing this, Ying Yi was slightly surprised, but still went to the kitchen. It was mealtime now. When he came to the kitchen, several guards and a servant were lining up to get food. The thin figure was among them. Seeing the figure standing behind the guards and yawning in boredom, he walked up and came to the person's side. "Guarding." The people who saw him saluted. "You, come with me." "Aw. Me? It's almost time to eat, and you're still leaving." Feng Jiu was a little dissatisfied. She was hungry. "Let's go, don't talk nonsense," Ying Yi said and walked back. Seeing this, Feng Jiu could only follow him. However, when she followed him to the outside of the main courtyard, she finally saw that familiar black figure, and she could not help but feel excited. Now you see it, right? Would he recognize her? The makeup on her face had been processed, and even she couldn't find any sense of familiarity. Master, is this okay? This servant is new. His name is Shaoli, Ying Yi said, motioning for Fengjiu to come forward. Shaoli Zi greets master. Fengjiu quickly stepped forward and bowed respectfully. She lowered her voice, which was different from her usual voice. Xianyuan Mose looked up. The face in front of him was unfamiliar. The voice was unfamiliar. However, he could tell at a glance that it was her. The corners of his lips curled up imperceptibly. Perhaps even she herself didn't notice that her eyes gave people a different feeling. He answered and looked away. He didn't say anything else. What? Fengjiu was startled and looked at Ying Yi. From today onwards, you will help master taste the food. You have to taste everything that master wants to eat first. After confirming that it's not poisonous, you can let master eat it. Ying Yi stood at the side and said. Taste the food. Really? Her eyes lit up and her gaze fell on the exquisite food on the table. There weren't many things on the table, but one set was very appetizing. Chapter 1250. Looking at her gluttonous face, Xianyuan Mose almost couldn't hold back his laughter. He knew that she liked good food and eating, and since she had become a servant here, she probably wouldn't be able to eat anything good. Since he had transferred her to his side, it was only natural that he let her eat something good. Moreover, he didn't notice it from afar, but now that he looked closer, he found that she had lost a lot of weight. Could it be that she hadn't eaten well while running around outside? Seeing her body so thin, he couldn't help but feel his heart ache. In his heart, he secretly decided that he must take this opportunity to fatten her up. Eat. He gestured. Okay. She replied with a smile, even her eyes turned into crescents. Standing by the table, she picked up a pair of chopsticks and an empty plate, and was about to pick up a piece of meat to eat when she heard that voice again. Sit down and eat. Hearing this, even Ying Yi and Hui Lang were surprised. The two of them couldn't help but look at each other, then at their master, then at the servant. They couldn't see what this servant had that could make their master treat him so differently. Yes. Fengjiu didn't stand on ceremony with him. After responding, she sat down at the table and picked up a piece of meat to eat. She picked up a piece from each plate and tasted it before pushing it in front of Xianyuan Mose. The two of you can leave. Xianyuan Mose glanced at the two beside him. Yes. The two of them responded, bowed, and left. When they were outside, Hui Lang looked at Ying Yi strangely and asked, "How did you know that master was looking for this servant? This servant doesn't look like anything special." Ying Yi glanced at him and said, "These few days, only one servant came to the inner courtyard. Master's food has always been tested by someone. Now that he asked someone to taste it, it's obvious that it's not just a taste test. There must be something wrong with this person." As he said that, he paused for a moment, then walked away. "Hey, where are you going?" Hui Lang asked. "I'm going to ask Yang Yong. He was the one who brought this person in, so he should know the details." Hearing this, Hui Lang hurriedly followed, "I'll go with you." In the courtyard, Xianyuan Mose watched her eat. Seeing that her eyes lit up when she saw the food, and then looking at her happy face while eating, he couldn't help but have a gentle smile in his eyes. This woman, couldn't she just tell him that she was here? She had to make herself like this, and couldn't even eat a good meal. "You're called Shaoli." He adjusted his expression and asked in a low and cold voice. "Yes, I'm a distant nephew from the outer courtyard," Feng Jiu said and moved a plate of food in front of him. Master, this is good. It tastes good. Yeah, yup. To eat to eat to eat is eat tes eat. Hearing this, she swallowed her saliva and smiled embarrassedly. I've already tried all these. If I eat any more, I'll finish all the food on your table. Ben June can't eat that much, eat. If you don't eat, you'll throw it all away later. Hearing this, her expression had a trace of strangeness. Master, you don't treat the servants so well. This man, could it be that he recognized her? Otherwise, why would he keep asking her to eat? Chapter 1251. No need, no need. I'll take care of such a good errand. She picked up her chopsticks again. Seeing this, Xianyuan didn't say anything else and quietly ate with her. After the meal, he had the servants clear away the things on the table, then ordered, from today onwards, you will follow by my side. Ah. She looked at him in astonishment, but I don't know how to do anything. Follow by my side and listen to my orders. If you don't know how to do it, I won't let you do it. Saying this, he stood up and said, also, move into my main courtyard. There's a room over there that's empty. From today onwards, all of my personal affairs will be handled by you. Seeing her blinking and staring blankly at him, he pulled a long face and said in a deep voice, do it well. If you do it well, I'll reward you. If you don't, you'll be punished. What are you still standing there for? Why aren't you going? Oh, okay. She replied in a daze, then turned and walked out. As she walked, she thought about it and felt that something was wrong. At the same time, on the other side, Hui Lang and Ning Yi found Yang Yong in the front courtyard, who was giving orders to the servants. Old Yang, where did that servant come from? Hui Lang walked up and patted him on the shoulder. What's wrong? Yang Yong asked with a smile, did he offend you? No, but it's very strange. I don't know what's wrong with Master today. He actually said that he wanted to find someone to taste his food. You also know that his food is absolutely safe. Today, he suddenly wanted us to find a servant to taste his food. If he wanted to find a servant, then so be it. But I found a few, but none of them caught Master's eye. It was Ing Yi who went to find Little Li, who just entered the inner courtyard, and Master let him stay. At this point, Hui Lang angrily said, and Master actually let him sit and eat. We don't have this kind of treatment. Hearing this, Yang Yong's eyes moved slightly and he smiled. We don't need to guess what Master does. He has his reasons. No, who is that boy? Where did you find him? He's the nephew of the outer courtyard steward. I saw that he was honest and reliable, so I arranged for him to go in. Don't worry. This person will be fine. How is there no problem? From what I see, Master's attitude towards him is not quite right. Although that brat has delicate features and an honest look, I feel that he is a slippery person with one look. He is definitely not simple. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to mingle with Master in just a few days. As soon as he finished speaking, he was stunned and slapped his thigh. I know. This kid must be a spy who had snuck in. No, I have to tell Master. What are you doing? Ing Yi pulled him back and glanced at him. Didn't you hear Yang Yong say that there's nothing wrong with this person? Can a problematic person be transferred to the inner court? But. No buts. Since he said there's no problem, then there must be no problem. Right, Yang Yong? Ing Yi looked at him and asked. Hearing this, Yang Yong smiled warmly and nodded, don't worry. I've investigated this person. There's really no problem with him. Moreover, you have to believe in Master. Master has his own reasons for doing things. If he can trust someone, we can naturally trust him too. Chapter 1252. Seeing him say this, Yi didn't ask any more questions. This fox, if he didn't say anything, they wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. And it was obvious that he knew about this person's background, but didn't plan on telling them, so they could only rely on themselves to find out. But it could be seen that even if this person had a problem, he wasn't dangerous. Otherwise, if he was a threat to Master, Yang Yong wouldn't have transferred him to the inner courtyard. On the other side, Fengzhou, who had returned to the outer courtyard to pack her things, entered the servants' quarters in the outer courtyard. Only then did she remember that she didn't have anything to pack here. There were only 2 sets of servants' clothes and some toiletries, and that was it. After she simply put away those things, she sat cross-legged on the bed and propped up her chin with one hand as she thought. Did this Xianyuan Mose recognize her or not? If he recognized her, he would probably recognize her, right? He wouldn't say anything about punishment, so did that mean he really didn't recognize her and just found her pleasing to the eye? Pleasing to the eye. She felt it was strange and took out a mirror from her space to look at it. At most, it was a delicate and pretty little brother. This kind of person could be found all over the streets. Dinyo. Dinyo. The voice from outside made her come back to her senses. She put the mirror into her space, then carried her things out of bed and walked out. Uncle. Why are you here? It was that old man. Uncle, I heard that after you were transferred to the inner courtyard, you were personally transferred to Master's side to serve him. Is that true? The old man said excitedly. Seeing the things in her hands, he couldn't help but smile from his old face. You're promising, you're promising. You've only been here for a few days and you've already caught Master's eye. You have to do a good job and don't let Master's trust in you down. Uncle, don't worry, I'll do a good job. She smiled and nodded in response. Good, 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 then you can go. Uncle heard that you came back to pack your things and will be living in the inner courtyard in the future, so I came to take a look. The old man was very happy and his voice was full of energy. All right, then I'll leave first. Master said that he wanted me to serve him closely, in case he can't find me when he comes looking for me. She put the packed bundle on her shoulder and walked into the inner courtyard under the old man's gratified gaze. Hey, stop right there. Before he could enter the inner courtyard, he was called out. She turned around and looked at Hui Lang and Ning Yi who were walking towards her. She smiled and saluted, Guard Captain, Ning Yi. Where are you going with this bag on your back? Hui Lang asked, staring at the skinny young man in front of him. Hearing this, Fengzhou grinned. Master asked me to be his personal attendant and to manage the affairs around him. He also asked me to move to his main courtyard, so I came back to pack my things. Hearing this, Hui Lang glared at him. Master asked you to serve him personally. You even have to move to the main courtyard. Did the sun rise from the west? This was too strange. When Ning Yi heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He stared at the skinny young man in front of him. This young man didn't look outstanding. However, he had been by his master's side for many years. There was only one person who could make his master do such strange things. Looking at the person in front of him, he already had an answer in his heart. That's right, other than her, who else could make his master do this? Only she could make Yang Yong feel at ease leaving her by his master's side. Chapter 1253. If there's nothing else, I'll go in first. She bowed and walked inside. Hey, you. Hui Lang still wanted to say something, but was stopped by Ning Yi. What are you doing? At least let me ask clearly. He glared at Ing Yi and said, "Don't you think that master is too strange? Where did this kid come from? How many days has it been since he entered the mansion? Master has arranged for him to go to the main courtyard and to personally serve him. There must be a problem." "I already think there's no problem. You're the only one who has a problem," Ing Yi said and walked inside. After a few steps, he paused and looked back at Hui Lang, who was still scratching his head, and reminded him, "You'd better not provoke him. Anyway, it's fine as long as you know that he's not a spy or an assassin. Don't cry when the time comes." "Ha! What a joke, I'll suffer in the hands of a servant." He sneered and didn't take it seriously. Ing Yi shook his head and walked away. Not only Grey Wolf, but also the guards and secret guards in the mansion, as well as the servants, couldn't figure out why this manservant was transferred to the side by the master after only a few days. Obviously, he looked like an ordinary young man. How did he catch the master's eye? However, even though they had doubts in their hearts, they did not ask. They only paid more attention to the manservant called Shaoli Zi on normal days. Early in the morning, Fengjiu yawned and carried a basin of water to Xianyuanmo's room. Yesterday evening, he told her that he would go to the palace this morning, so she had to get up early tomorrow morning to serve him. Therefore, although she was still sleepy, she got up and washed her face to wake up. Then, she brought the basin of water to him. "Master." She put the basin of water on the basin and walked into the room. She saw that the bed was covered by a gauze curtain. She could only vaguely see a person sleeping under the quilt. She walked forward with light steps. When she lifted the bed curtain, a pair of hands suddenly reached out and grabbed her, pulling her into the room without warning. "Ah!" She let out a low cry and threw herself onto the bed, pressing down on Xianyuanmo's body. Her shocked gaze met his deep and dark eyes. Those dark eyes were like a bottomless abyss that she couldn't see the bottom of. It was as if her entire body had been sucked into it. On the big bed, two figures were lying on top of each other, separated only by a blanket. Xianyuanmo grabbed her hand with one hand, then wrapped his other hand around her waist and pressed her down, not allowing her to leave. Their eyes met, and an ambiguous aura filled the air. "Hee, you really recognized me?" She smiled sheepishly. If she was only suspicious before, she was 100% sure now. She didn't know that this domineering and cold man would pull a stranger onto his bed. Back then, she had also suffered a lot at his hands. Hearing this, Xianyuanmo's lips curled up. His deep voice was magnetic, and there was a trace of laziness in it. "Is this a spot check? Why didn't you tell me you were coming here? I can send someone to pick you up." He hugged her like this, looking at the red lips in front of him. His throat moved slightly, and he felt a surge of fire in his lower abdomen. There was an impulse in his body. Chapter 1254. Originally, I didn't want to come so early. Moreover, I was thinking of not seeing you for 10 years. She smiled and said, "However, it just so happens that I have some things to take care of here, so I came here in advance. I originally wanted to secretly see if you were living a carefree life, but who would have thought that I would be discovered by your housekeeper a few days after I came here? Speaking of which, this Yang Yong is really not bad. He's much more reliable than Hui Lang." She couldn't help but praise. However, when he heard this, Xianyuanmo's jealousy surged. "Yang Yong is not bad? How is he not bad? Is he good-looking? Or is he outstanding? Both. This person is good-looking and has a calm and reserved personality, but he also has the gentle and refined aura of a noble young master. Moreover, his ability to handle matters and his vigilance is good. I heard that this person is really from an aristocratic family. It's really unexpected that he would become your housekeeper. She looked at the person under her and smiled. I really couldn't tell that your methods of winning people over are top-notch. This kind of person is even willing to be your housekeeper. Are you praising me? Or are you praising him? His words were filled with jealousy. I'm praising him, ahaha. Fengjiu laughed. He coldly snorted and said, You're itching for a beating. The hand around her waist pinched her waist. Because he didn't use much strength, it made her feel itchy and goosebumps appeared all over her body. Ah! She cried out in a low voice and struggled to free her hand. She pressed on his chest and jumped up, quickly retreating out of the bed curtain. When she stood up straight, she couldn't help but rub her waist as she shouted, Didn't you say you were going to the palace? Hurry up and get up. Xianyuan Mose rested on the bed for a while. He took a deep breath and gently exhaled. After suppressing the heat in his body, he got up. Seeing that she was standing 3 steps away from the bed, he couldn't help but laugh. Why are you standing so far away? Didn't you want to help me wash up? I've already brought you water. Here, I put it there. She smiled and said, I'll find you clothes. Which one do you want to wear? As she spoke, she opened his wardrobe and saw that it was all black. She couldn't help but twitch her mouth. It's all black. Thinking about it, she didn't seem to have seen him wear any other colors. But then again, black was the color that best reflected his domineering aura. Just pick any set. They're all about the same. Xianyuan Mose walked to the side to wash up as he spoke. Not long after, he returned to the bed and reached out to put on the black robe she had taken out. You should change your clothes too. I'll take you into the palace to have a look. Enter the palace. She was slightly startled. Let's not, shall we? If I go in, won't I be causing trouble for you? I'll wait for you in the mansion. Don't worry, I won't leave. She smiled. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose also showed a smile. While letting her help him fasten his belt and enjoying her considerate service, he said, You haven't been here before, right? I'll take you around the palace. The Xianyuan Imperial Palace is much bigger than yours. As he spoke, he looked at her. Seeing that she was wearing the servant's clothes, he said, Change back to women's clothes. No one will dare to do anything to you here. Since you're here, I'll take you to see my imperial father. No. Chapter 1255. Seeing this, he nodded his head, All right. Since that's the case, you wait for me in the mansion and we'll eat lunch together. As he spoke, he handed a jade tablet to her. Take this. You can mobilize anyone in the mansion. You're giving me another token. I don't even have enough tokens to use. She had a lot of tokens in her space, from all kinds of forces. Now that he handed her another one, she didn't want to take it. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose curled his lips and put the jade tablet in her hand. This is the mansion's jade tablet. Seeing this jade tablet is like seeing me. She looked at the jade tablet, and her eyes turned. She asked with a smile, Can I do anything with this? Seeing this, he slightly raised his eyebrows. What do you want to do? Hui Lang asked me to scrub the toilet 2 days ago. Humph. He's got guts. He dares to ask you to scrub the toilet. How do you want to deal with him? Just take this jade tablet and order someone. He straightened his collar and said, With this jade tablet, you can walk sideways in this mansion. All right, then I'll have someone prepare a carriage for you. Take advantage of this time to eat breakfast before going out. She smiled and nodded her head. She walked out and ordered someone to prepare a carriage. She also had someone bring breakfast and put it in the courtyard. Xianyuan Mose walked out and sat down at the table in the courtyard. He motioned for her to sit down and eat with him. Seeing this, the shadow guards in the courtyard couldn't help but secretly look at that figure. Master. Ying Yi and Hui Lang came to the courtyard and respectfully bowed. Seeing that figure sitting next to Master, Ying Yi's expression was normal, but Hui Lang glared at him, somewhat angry. Why could this boy accompany Master to eat? Really made him want to beat him up. After Xianyuan Mose ate a bit, he put down his chopsticks and said to Fingzhou, "Eat slowly. I'll go out first." After saying this, he said to the two people beside him, "Ying Yi, follow Ben Jun to the palace. Hui Lang, stay." "Yes." Ying Yi responded, and when he got up and walked out, he followed behind him. Hui Lang saw that the young man was still sitting there eating even after his master had left. He couldn't help but step forward and heavily slap the table. "Young man. Didn't you see that master had left? Why are you still sitting here eating? Are you the master, or is the master the master? I don't know what's wrong with master, he actually wants this kid to eat slowly." He wasn't afraid that this brat would go overboard. After Fingzhou finished the last pastry, he put down his chopsticks and said, "Captain, just now master told me to scrub the toilets. You have to scrub 100 toilets, otherwise. Who are you trying to fool? Master wants me to scrub the toilet. A few days ago, master punished me. I didn't do anything wrong these 2 days. How could master say something like that? What's more, it should be master who said it, not a brat like you." Before he finished speaking, he saw a jade pendant dangling in the young man's hand. He immediately swallowed the rest of his words. He widened his eyes and asked, "You stole master's jade pendant?" Fingzhou rolled his eyes. "Who is master? Do you think I can steal from him? He gave this to me and said that if you don't believe me, you can take out this jade pendant. This, how is this possible?" Chapter 1256. Fengzhou looked at him and chuckled. She waved the jade pendant in her hand. "Don't worry about how you got here. Hurry up and go wash the bucket." Hearing this, Hui Lang was stunned for a moment before he reacted. "It's you. You're targeting me, right?" He remembered that he had asked her to wash the toilet a few days ago, but she didn't manage to do it in the end. "Guard captain, you're really thinking too much. I'm just a manservant. How can I do that? Master left this message before he left. I don't know what's going on." She looked innocent and didn't admit it. "It really wasn't you." Thinking about it, how could the master punish him because of a new servant? However, he didn't do anything wrong recently. "Yes, it's not me," she said without blushing or panting. "Then let's make a deal. Can you?" "No." She didn't wait for him to finish and refused. "You should hurry up and wash the toilet. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble when master comes back." As she said this, she stood up and said, "I still have to water the flowers. I'll leave first." Looking at the figure leaving the courtyard, Hui Lang frowned and scratched his head. He asked the hidden guard in the dark, "Did master really say that?" It was quiet. No one spoke. He couldn't help but stare at a certain place. "I'm asking you. Why are you pretending to be mute?" The hidden guard in that place was helpless. He could only say, "Hui Lang, just do as he says. The jade pendant is in your hand. You can't do anything wrong." Hearing this, Hui Lang sighed and walked out. He thought, should I find someone to wash the toilet before master comes back? However, this thought was extinguished as soon as it appeared. It was better to do it honestly. On the other side, in the main hall of the imperial palace, a middle-aged man wearing casual clothes was sitting on the main seat. He was emitting a powerful pressure and the aura of a superior. He looked at the black-clothed figure standing below him. He said in a deep voice, "In a few days, the Chishui dynasty's crown prince and third princess will come. You'll be in charge of receiving them." The deep and dignified voice paused for a moment before continuing, "The Chishui dynasty wants to mend relations with us. This third princess is the #1 beauty of the Chishui dynasty. She's also very talented. You should seize this opportunity. If the two countries can form an alliance through marriage, it will be very beneficial for us." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo's, Xianyuan dynasty, why would we need to expand our country through marriage? If we want to expand our territory, we should expand it. But if this princess wants to form a marriage alliance, we haven't even seen her yet. How can we let it go? The monarch on the main seat said in a deep voice. He stared at his son and said, "I know you have women you like in the inferior countries. However, you should know that as the crown prince of one of the 8 great empires, the women who can stand by your side must be extraordinary. Even if there were 10 women from the inferior countries, they wouldn't be worthy of your status." He paused for a moment. Seeing that his son pursed his lips and didn't say anything, the monarch continued, "If you really like her, then take her in as a bed warmer. In the future, as the monarch of a country, you can choose from 3,000 beauties in your harem. It's not a big deal to take in a woman." Hearing this, he looked up at his father and didn't say much. He only said, "Father, if there's nothing else, then I'll go back first." Chapter 1257. Give me a little more time. One day, I will become so strong that no one will dare to look down on me. Strong enough to stand by your side and look down on the world with you. Leaving the palace, Xianyuan Mo's expression was not too good. His face was dark, and the change in his aura caused the entire carriage to be shrouded in an oppressive aura. He leaned against the seat and slowly closed his eyes to adjust his breathing. After a while, he opened his eyes again. This time, the aura on his body had calmed down. The crown prince and third princess of Chishui province were coming. And from what he heard, his imperial father wanted him to marry the crown prince of Chishui province. If the woman in his residence found out about this, he would probably be in deep trouble. He thought about it all the way until they reached the main gate. After getting off the carriage, he went straight to the main courtyard. In the end, he couldn't find anyone in the main courtyard. After asking around, he found out that she had gone to the kitchen. "Call her back." As he spoke, Ying Yi, who was following behind him, responded. He left the courtyard and went to the kitchen to find her. In his heart, he was thinking, if the ghost doctor found out about this, what would she do? Moreover, this was too much of a coincidence. Of all times, the ghost doctor had to come at this time. When he thought about how the crown prince and third princess of Chishui province were coming to their residence, he felt that the days would be very chaotic. Fengjiu was indeed in the kitchen. Because she had nothing to do, she came to the kitchen to chat with the kitchen maids. She also had something to eat. But just as she was chatting, she heard Ying Yi's voice. "Shaoli, master wants you to go back." She turned around and saw Ying Yi walking over from not far away. Hearing his words, she asked, "He's back?" As she spoke, she had already gotten up and walked out. Seeing this, Ying Yi also walked behind her. Thinking that he hadn't seen Hui Lang yet, he couldn't help but feel that it was strange. He planned to go take a look later. When he arrived at the main courtyard, he saw that Xianyuan Mo's was not in the courtyard, but in the room. He walked in. Ying Yi stopped outside the courtyard and looked at the closed door. His eyes moved slightly, and he turned to leave. What happened? When Fengjiu came into the room, he saw the person sitting at the table with a dark face. He couldn't help but sit down in front of him and pour him a glass of water. Xianyuan Mose looked at her and said, "In a few days, there may be guests coming to the mansion. You're like this when there's a guest. Are you familiar with each other?" She raised her eyebrows in a teasing manner. The Qishui dynasty is also one of the 8 great empires. It's the closest to our Xianyuan dynasty. This time, it's their crown prince and the 3rd princess. My father also ordered us to treat them well. If there was anyone in the Xianyuan Empire who could suppress him, then that person was undoubtedly his father. Yi Futian didn't know what level his father's strength had reached. He only knew that his father was very strong, much stronger than him. Then treat them well. Or... She glanced at him and said with a smile, "Are you afraid that I'll feel uncomfortable here?" "Don't worry, I'm not such a narrow-minded person." Hearing this, he reached out and held her in his arms to sit down. "My father intends to marry the Qishui dynasty. But don't worry, I won't agree. I always make my own decisions and solve my own problems. Even if that person is my father, he can't make decisions for me." Chapter 1258. That's right, in this world, the strong are the king, everything is decided by strength. He said, looking at her in his arms, "And I believe that your future achievements will be more extraordinary than mine." Hearing this, Fingzhou chuckled, "You have so much confidence in me. You are the woman I like. If I don't have confidence in you, then who do I have confidence in?" He chuckled and wrapped his arms around her waist. He leaned his head on her shoulder and said, "All right, let's not talk about those things. Tell me about what happened after you brought those brats into the Hell Mountain range. You also know about this matter. It seems that Ren Xiang's intelligence is good." She chuckled and said, "Wasn't I a student in a 2-star academy? I don't know what happened, but I made a mess of their Xing domain, so..." In the room, Fingzhou told her about what happened there, the things that he didn't know about. In the evening, after dinner, Xianyuan Mose took her out to play, and did not return until late at night. Because Xianyuan Mose took her with him wherever he went, the only thing missing was sleeping on the same bed. Although the guards and shadow guards in the manor didn't say anything, they were already starting to get curious. When Hui Lang, who had been washing the toilet for a few days, came back, he saw his master helping the boy with the food. He was so shocked that his jaw almost fell to the ground, and he quickly retreated to find Ying Yi. "I was just about to go to Master's place, but I saw Master helping the boy with the food. Ying Yi, do you think Master is okay? Don't make a fuss, don't look at what you shouldn't look at, even if you look at it, don't open your mouth," Ying Yi said, standing not far from the main courtyard with his arms crossed. "But..." "No buts, if you are too idle, go pull the grass, don't always follow me around." Hearing this, Hui Lang snorted, "Who follows you around? I just want to ask, do you think I like to stay by your side?" As he spoke, he saw Yang Yong coming from not far away, and seeing him, he was surprised. "Why is this guy here? What are the two of you doing here?" Yang Yong walked over and asked. "The two of us are idle people, unlike a busy person like you. We haven't seen each other for a few days. However, why did you come to Master's place today? Is there something you need from Master?" Grey Wolf approached and asked. "It's not that I'm looking for Master, I just have something to report." He smiled warmly and looked towards the main courtyard. He saw that the two people inside were eating, so he didn't go in to disturb them. Instead, he went under the tree to chat with them. "I heard that Master is stuck with this brat every day." Hui Lang curled his lips. "He looks like a gigolo. I don't know what medicine he gave Master to make Master treat him so well." Hearing this, Yang Yong paused for a moment, then chuckled softly, "Hui Lang, actually, you should be training guards. As for the main brain, it was only enough to train the manor's guards or do things according to orders. If there was something that really required him to use his brain, he would definitely mess it up. Although I am the head of the guards, and these guards are under my command, but for the matter of training guards, it is a waste of talent to let me go. Yi and Yang Yong couldn't help but laugh when they heard this. This idiot. That's true, letting you wash the toilet is a waste of talent. Yang Yong couldn't help but tease. Chapter 1259. Hearing this, the two of them couldn't help but chuckle. As the laughter spread, the two people who had finished eating walked out together. Fingzhou, who was beside Xianyuan Mose, saw Yang Yong and called out with a smile, "Housekeeper." Xianyuan Mose saw this and thought of how she had praised Yang Yong for not only being handsome, but also having a gentle personality. Seeing her smile when she saw Yang Yong, Xianyuan Mose's face couldn't help but darken. He glared at Yang Yong with hostility. "Why have you come? Don't you have anything to do in the outer court?" Hearing his master's angry words, Yang Yong smiled. "Master, I came to tell you that the people from the Qishui Empire have already entered the palace. Presumably, the king will send someone to summon you soon." Xianyuan Mose frowned. "It's just the crown prince and young master of the Qishui Empire. Do I need to personally go and greet them? For this matter, you and Grey Wolf can go to the palace to pick him up." Yang Yong nodded with a smile, "Yes." He looked at Hui Lang and signaled for him to leave. Only then did the two of them leave together. "Is it all right to just let the two of them go?" Fengzhou asked. After all, they were the crown prince and princess of an empire. You don't know this. Although the 8 great empires exist as equals, the strongest is our Xianyuan Empire. Not only that, but my prestige in the 8 great empires is incomparable to that of the other princes and princes. Allowing them to stay in my residence is already giving them a lot of face. Fengzhou was slightly surprised by Xianyuan Mose's words, but also felt relieved. That's right, he was just rather low-key when he went out. She didn't seem to have seen him make a grand appearance in her life. However, she had never doubted his strength. Even though she had saved him in the Jiufu forest when he was being hunted down, that was only because the cold poison in his body had flared up. Now that he had returned, she saw that his body had recovered quickly. The cold poison had been cured, and his strength was no longer suppressed. He should have few opponents like this. Yi, go and get someone to prepare. Let them stay in the northern courtyard, Xianyuan Mose ordered in a deep voice. Yes, sir. Yi nodded and left. Do I need to do anything? She asked. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose turned his head slightly and looked at her beside him. His beautiful lips curved into a gentle smile. You just need to stay by my side. Inside the imperial palace, the monarch saw Yang Yong and Hui Lang sent by Xianyuan Moses. He sent you two to welcome the crown prince and princess of the Qishui Empire. Monarch, my master said that our Xianyuan Empire is still a great country. We are the head of all the empires. You shouldn't have to personally welcome a crown prince and a princess. Therefore, he ordered us to bring them to the residence after they have greeted you, monarch, and we will entertain them. Hearing this, the monarch's dark expression eased a little. He glanced at Yang Yong. You are the second son of the Yang family. Yes, he replied respectfully. His voice was neither haughty nor humble. You may leave. You two wait outside the eastern courtyard. He waved his hand, indicating that the two of them should leave. Yes, Yang Yong replied. Then he walked out with Hui Lang. Chapter 1260. Hui Lang looked at Yang Yong beside him as he walked towards the eastern hall. He couldn't help but say in admiration, Old Yang, you're really a butler. You're neither haughty nor humble in front of the king. I don't even dare to breathe loudly when I see him. Yang Yong smiled warmly. That's nothing. We just have to remember that our master is called Xianyuan Mose. Everyone else has to be respectful. There's no need to be afraid of anyone. No wonder master lets you handle everything. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to do it. In the past, when master left, the entire residence was under Yang Yong's management. Nothing happened. If it were him, he wouldn't be able to do it. Everyone has their own strengths. I can't compare to what you have. Hearing this, he became excited and asked excitedly, "Oh. You have something that I can't compare to you. What is it?" Hearing this, Yang Yong's mouth twitched. He glanced at him. "I don't have the courage to move forward." "Oh. Is that so?" "That's true. You have to think twice when you encounter a problem. I'm not like you, taking action without a word. Direct and quick." He nodded, rather pleased with himself. Yang Yong smiled warmly and did not say anything else. When he arrived at the entrance of the Eastern Palace Hall, he waited for approximately 2 hours before he saw the two of them walk out. A glint flashed in his warm eyes as he began to size them up without leaving a trace. The man was about 25 years old. He wore a purple robe with a jade belt around his waist. His face was handsome and outstanding. However, his skin was slightly pale. He didn't give off a masculine aura, but rather a feminine aura. As for the woman by his side, she wore a gorgeous dress. Her hands were placed upright before her, and her footsteps were steady and elegant. Her peerlessly beautiful appearance carried an innate nobility, and the red mark that seemed like a flame between her brows added an unusual elegance to her. Her eyes were suffused with a charming charm that was unforgettable. As expected of the two most important people of the Qishui dynasty, one of the 8 great empires. These two people were outstanding beyond his expectations. He put away his thoughts and slowly walked forward. He cupped his hands and bowed. "This one is Yang Yong. Greetings to Prince Qishui and the third princess." Yang Yong. Prince Qishui's slender eyes swept over and landed on Yang Yong. "Yes, I'm here to welcome the two of you into the mansion under my master's orders." "Your master is Xianyuan Mose." "Exactly. Lead the way." He waved his hand, indicating for them to follow. "Please." He leaned to the side and gestured for them to leave. Then, he and Hui Lang led them out. Prince Qishui and the third princess came to the Xianyuan Empire with a group of people. Therefore, when this group of people arrived at the Crown Prince's mansion, they also attracted the attention of everyone. However, other than some of their trusted aides, no one else was allowed to enter the mansion. Therefore, when Prince Qishui arrived at the gate of the mansion, he ordered his men to settle down the accompanying guards. He and his sister brought 10 trusted aides into the mansion. Yang Yong personally led them to the northern courtyard to settle down. The entire northern courtyard was given to them as a place to rest. Then, he looked at the two of them and said, "If the two of you are lacking anything, you can ask the servants to find me. I will arrange it for the two of you." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.